Hello, boys and girls. I want to welcome you to another Trainer's Talk. This is going to be a really good conversation with Chief Mitchell Celaya.
Celaya.
That's correct. And so we're going to sit down, we're going to have this good conversation talking about some current event stuff, but also really want to just kind of get a chance to know Chief. I had a time to sit down with him a couple of weeks ago, and we were able to kind of chat, and I just really thought his insight, his background would be really helpful in times are going on now, but really about looking towards the future. So thank you again for joining.
Oh, I'm honored to actually take part of this. It was awesome. I'm glad I didn't scare you away.
Yes, you know, that's kind of funny that's the first thing. I wasn't planning on talking about that, but I found it refreshing, but also in a way when Chris Canning, the mayor, connected us, and in a way when we first were deciding just to casually meet before we did this, we met not too far from here. You asked, like, where do you want to meet, and you asked, we can meet at the park. Maybe you'd be more comfortable going to the park versus coming to the station, and why do you think that was, why did you throw that piece into it? Why do you feel like, you're comfortable?
Well, I believe I'm very cognizant of, particularly when you meet somebody, how they take you, and for some people, going into a police station is not the first thing on their list.
Exactly.
And it can be intimidating. There's some people that, with uniforms, and if there's people with guns walking around. I've had employees in the past, records people, that really nervous around officers who carry weapons. I go, okay, you're working in a police department, right?
Yes.
Officers walk all around. So I'm kind of cognizant that, and we had just met.
Yes.
And I don't know what your exposure has been. You didn't know me before a week and a half ago. So
exactly.
And I wanted you to be comfortable, and I think that's the reason why I asked.
Yeah, and I thought it was just an interesting take. And in talking, tell me, where did you grow up?
So I was born in San Jose, but I lived most of my life up in Northern California in a place called Yuba City, which is probably about 40 minutes to an hour north of Sacramento. It's a rural place, unlike Calistoga.
Yes.
It is farmlands, rice fields, orchards, things
Yeah.
like that. And I lived in the country, so it's that's what I called home. But actually, when I look back at my life, I lived longer in the Bay Area than I did in my younger life.
Yeah.
So I guess. But I always think back. That's where I come from.
Totally. And before you came to Calistoga, you were the chief of police at Berkeley, correct? Or
the University of California, Berkeley.
UC Berkeley. And tell me about the early days of you being an officer. What got you into becoming an officer, and what was the kind of things that really got you like, I can make a career out of this?
Well, I think I was kind of an anomaly. I've always wanted to be an officer.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dig too deep into my psyche of why that.
Yeah.
I think a lot had to do with my upbringing.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and dive into that actually, because explain. I think your upbringing is unique, and I think it adds a lot to the table of you being an officer, having that upbringing of seeing different demographics, and so tell me a little bit more. What was about your upbringing that you feel like helps you as a cop, or has led you to be a cop?
Well, first of all, let me say that I truly believe that your experiences and the people you associate with, as you grow up, kind of define who you are.
Yeah.
Kind of your perceptions, how you look at things, those kinds of things. And I think when I now look back, I didn't have an appreciation during my upbringing.
Yeah.
But as I look back, I think I benefited from it. I was pretty fortunate. However, I have to say that I would not wish aspects of my upbringing or life on anybody.
Yeah.
We were essentially, we were poor. When I joke, I lived in a trailer in a barn.
Yeah.
Early on, My dad was a mixture of Mexican and Native American. My mom was Mexican but adopted. And I'm the oldest of 3 boys. I have two other brothers and a younger sister. She's the baby. And my dad had a temper like you wouldn't believe, especially when he drank.
Yeah.
He was an alcoholic and frequently engaged in domestic violence.
Yeah.
As the oldest one, I was typically the focus.
Yes.
Being drug out of bed and, maybe not so many things happening to me and, just threats. And I've got scars and things to show it. And, and back in those days, that was life.
Yeah, yeah.
But getting back to your question, so why? So for whatever reason in my head, it'd be like, I watched TV, it was Adam 12.
Yeah.
It was Dragnet.
Yes, yeah.
And so it was just like, I want to be an officer. You
Yeah.
know? One, because I think a sense of authority and protection and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it kind of stuck with me, throughout my, secondary school, high school, getting into ROP programs with law enforcement. And that was my goal in life. And
Yeah.
it's been my goal, throughout my life. I went to a junior college and took administration of justice and criminology, put myself through the police academy. I was fortunate enough to get hired at UC Berkeley.
Yeah.
But, again, I'm not trying to analyze myself, but I just think that had a lot to do with my mindset. And although farm labor is a honorable job, I learned really quick that's not what I wanted to do for a living.
Yeah.
It was a long road to get where I'm at, but I say sometimes I survived that road.
Yeah.
But I think I benefited from it because it gave me a different perspective and insight. When you're talking to victims or looking at that.
Yeah.
So.
Is there like a level of empathy you feel like if you compare an officer who probably didn't go through the same things that you did, maybe who went through a more stable kind of upbringing and maybe middle class or something, comparatively, do you think there's a level of empathy that you see when you address somebody who's probably in your same situation when you were a younger kid?
Oh, definitely, I think so, particularly when it comes to domestic violence or crimes against children.
Yeah.
I don't have flashbacks to my younger years.
Yeah.
Or anything, but I, in many cases, was in those same positions.
Totally.
I was hiding under the bed.
Yeah.
And my dad dragging me out.
Yeah.
And saying crazy things and I got hit by a shovel on my hip. From my dad. He just got all mad and.
Yeah.
So I think it just gave me a lot of empathy and an understanding of what kids go through, what families go through, and that it is tough to kind of break that cycle.
Yeah. And how long have you been the chief of police at Calistoga?
So I've been the chief of police, coming up on 7 years. I started here at the beginning of 2013, January,
Yeah.
as the chief.
Yeah.
I was the chief at UC Berkeley for about 3.5 years, but I had a career there of about almost a little over 30 years.
Wow.
Where I moved up the ranks, officer, field training officer, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, assistant chief, and then ultimately the chief.
Wow.
And that was just another stage of my life that I think I learned just a tremendous amount of things about people and how to interact with people and kind of looking at law enforcement and things that I thought we needed to do or change or how we should act.
Yeah. And in our previous conversation, you talked about one of the things, being in an area of high-level academics, sometimes there's also a level of paralyzed by the options or paralyzed by the academic type of situations. And you were able to kind of bring a more common sense, I think breaking down what you talked about, how you looked at the options. I think you said in 3. If you don't mind talking about that a little bit, how you thought about those things.
Well, I think I'm a pretty simple guy.
Yeah.
I'm not the sharpest tool in the toolbox.
Yeah.
And so I always go back to what common sense is, understanding that common sense isn't common.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And good judgment.
Yeah.
And I always look at things to break it down into its simplest form as far as, because I always think the simple approach is usually a better approach.
Yeah.
And so when I was at UC Berkeley, it was funny. I look back on it now, and every time I moved up in rank,
Yes.
I was like, wow, I'm kind of fooling them. I didn't deserve to be where I was at.
Yeah.
Right? Because there was a lot of smart people there.
Yes.
Like way smarter.
Yeah.
Nobel laureates, the chancellor, all these people that were administrators were just brilliant.
Yeah.
Right? So I was, and I would be in meetings and things like that, and I was the only brown person in the room, and
Yeah.
everybody was twice my age, for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I took a couple things away. One is to have a very basic approach of looking at whatever the problem was, and I always wanted to have them see me as a problem solver.
Yes.
So I would, well, here's the issue. Here are the three approaches or three options. I always try to do three. Sometimes it's not always possible.
Yeah.
Of how we can handle this, and this is what I recommend. Always give them what I recommend, but they get the choice.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and no offense to the academics, because they're just brilliant people I work
Yes.
with, is they want to talk everything to death.
Yes.
Well, let's look at this, and let's talk about that, and how about this, and I think we need to study. Let's put a committee together for this or task force. And I'm like, this is happening like right now.
Yes.
Right, and so I would push it and go like, okay, and sometimes in 10 minutes, the landscape of this issue has changed.
Yeah. Totally.
So we need to make a decision, and which led me to follow a rule of mine, which is kind of a 70-30, sometimes 60-40 rule, which is, as long as I had 70% of the information, make a decision. Because what I found is you never have 100% of the information. If you wait for 100%, you'll never make a decision. And
Yeah.
that's what I was seeing in these committees, because we need to look into this and make sure we have all the facts. Well, we should always do that.
Yeah.
But things are moving, they change, and so by the time you come up with a solution, it was for facts that are no longer the facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that it just changed, it's escalated or de-escalated, and what you decide may or may not be appropriate.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. And Chris, and making this introduction, and he was telling me, and we talked about this a little bit, but tell me about your current family that you have. You have kids of your own and your wife. Tell me a little bit about that scenario and your background there.
So when I look back at my life, I find it somewhat interesting. So back in Yuba City, you were either white, Mexican, or East Indian.
Uh-huh.
Yuba City, that was it. There was one African American kid in my elementary school, and it was because he was adopted.
Yeah.
And in my high school, I could probably count on 5 fingers, maybe, other brown people, whether it's African American or even Asian or any other class.
Yeah.
And I'm saying all this because I go to Berkeley in 1982.
Yes.
And to tell you the facts or the truth, you would not believe it. It is the most diverse place on earth, I think.
Yes.
Socially, economically, races, people from different countries, whether you're gay, lesbian, queer, you name it. I mean, it just whatever you decided to call yourself, what group you was there in Berkeley.
Yeah.
And a pretty good large population, significant of African American.
Yeah.
So when I get to this place, I'm like, wow, it was unique. But coming from simple backgrounds with very monotone, culture experience, I married my beautiful wife, who's Cape Verdean, but as most people will see, she's African American.
Yeah.
Which leads me to having 3 boys.
Yeah.
Who are black.
Yeah.
And my daughter, who we adopted, and she's part Filipino and part Mexican.
Yeah.
And so, again, it kind of put in front of me issues.
Yeah.
Because, working with officers, it's funny how people get intimidated by people.
Yes.
And skin color sometimes does that.
Yeah.
And so, and I've seen it, and and I'm just transitioning to my boys, who are basically adults now, and I go like, I worry about them.
Yeah.
In the world, because my youngest boy, who is 19 and as goofy as can be, as sweet as can be, but he's like 6'3" and about 250. He's a big boy.
Yeah.
And he's got an afro. I kid you not. That's like to hear, and he's extremely proud of it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have any cultural awareness to his afro.
Yeah.
It's just a cool thing.
Yeah.
And he gets a lot of attention because people talk to him about it.
Yeah.
And but if you don't know him, and if you see him walking down the street, I'm going to guarantee you, there'll be a number of people that will cross the street.
Yeah.
And not have to walk by him.
Yeah. You know, kind of transitioning, we talking about, I think, the George Floyd incident, which I feel like is a spark, even though, you know, these type of things happen more than that, but that for sure was a spark within the country. I like to say personally, when that one happened, there was a very strong sense of despair. You know, there was anger. There was. I think the thing is not somebody not having a fair shot, and when somebody maybe of a different race would have that shot, would have the benefit of the doubt of just being cuffed, being detained, and going through the process the way the legal system should be. What was your first kind of reaction to that, and what has been the reaction that you've seen from other officers and talking to them about the incident?
Well, I can tell you, my first reaction was just disgust, anger, I mean, it was just appalling to me watching the video and seeing just the callousness displayed and the lack of profession of the officers there. They're kneeling on a person, he's handcuffed, the person is begging or asking, I can't breathe or whatever, and you can't readjust.
Yeah.
You got two other officers there. And for me, one of my background is I was a defensive tactics instructor and a crowd control instructor.
Yeah.
At Berkeley.
Yes.
I love Berkeley.
Yes.
I got thousands of hours of training and people that I've trained and things like that. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, how could that happen?
Yeah.
And of course another thing is like, oh my God, yet again, not even a black eye to the law enforcement. Worse than that.
Yeah.
I mean, because I can appreciate, the anger and the emotion and things like that. But, I mean, immediately it's like we're all law enforcement, including me, are going to get judged by that incident.
Yeah.
And the other incidents that have occurred like that. And it's just heartbreaking because I read somewhere where, less than 2% of those kinds of incidents make up cops.
Yeah.
Less than 2%. There are hundreds of thousands of officers that do their job, and they do it well. And an idiot like that, who shouldn't be an officer, does something like that.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a reckoning for that. I mean, there's got to be, call it reform, call it whatever. I just hope that we, and I know it's difficult to step back and to say, okay, what does reform mean? What do we need to do? And not have an emotional reaction where a pendulum goes all the way to the right or all the way left, because there's always unintended consequences for decisions and policies and things that we make.
Yes.
And, I first is officers should be held accountable. Agencies should be held accountable. We should always be looking at reform. We should be always looking at with a mindset of how can we do our job better? Yeah. It doesn't mean we're not doing a good job, or in some cases maybe we're not. Yeah. But we should, time moves, and we should move we move as a community, as a culture. We should be moving as a profession. Totally. And should always be looking at, okay, what's relevant now? May not have been relevant 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but now we're in now space.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? And so I think that it isn't a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And it's not one thing. I think that people that shouldn't be cops should be removed and shouldn't be cops.
Yeah.
Policies should be reviewed, whether it's use of force policies or hiring practices or training. I mean, I think it's a number of things. It isn't one thing. And I talked to my young staff.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, put your seatbelt on and just hang on for the ride, and we're just going to see where this is going to lead. I mean, there's things in the legislature that's going to come down.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. But
yeah.
At the moment, I have 8 officers. 4 of them are women.
Yeah.
I just recently hired 3 of them.
Yeah.
Half my staff has less. A third to 40% have less than 6 months of experience.
Wow. Yeah.
My senior officer, the officer, has 6 years of experience.
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah.
In Calistoga, this is a job of doing. The officers, the more they do, the better they get.
Yes.
They establish confidence. They can do that stuff. Well, there's an upside and downside to that. I mean, it's a great community. So yeah, we get crime, and there's the big thing that bad things happen. That's the profession where bad things happen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's reality. But we don't have it all the time, and so we're always in training. Try to give them the skill set so when these things do happen,
yeah,
they're prepared.
Totally.
And we have unfunded mandates that officers are required to have training.
Yeah.
And it's challenging for us. So circle back down to your question is, I would look at our salary and compensation packages, and so we can retain the good people that we have.
Totally.
And attract people.
Yeah.
Even veterans or people with experience.
So ideally, what does a full staff under those types of recommendations, what does that look like? How many more sergeants or supervising type of and potential officers would that be?
Well, ideally, it would be 4 sergeants. Practically, I could say that could be challenging if we had, 3 and 2 corporals. I have 1 corporal filled now, to provide some guidance and some supervision and leadership to our young staff. We've had a lieutenant's vacant position for the last couple of years. They were actually going to fill it, but then we went into a police alternative study.
Yeah.
And I understood it that, maybe we shouldn't hire a lieutenant right now until we decide through this alternative study, what is the department going to look like, or where direction do we want to go?
Yeah.
But day-to-day operations, the officers do a great job. When significant things happen, they do a good job.
Yeah.
But there's guidance that's needed, which is why I get phone calls at home. And
yeah.
My sergeants get phone calls at home.
Yeah.
As I tell my staff, we can control how we talk to people. We control how we interact with people. We may not always be able to control what the individual brings to the table.
Yeah.
Right? Someone would call it baggage or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to escalate a situation than it is to de-escalate. So we should always start down and really look at the behavioral stuff to determine how we respond to individuals. But the young cops sometimes go like, I don't know why that person was just being evasive or very it's not like they were scared or apprehensive. And then sometimes those behaviors for cops turn off to be like, well, why are you acting so nervous?
Yeah.
You must be hiding something. You must not be telling the truth.
Yeah.
When the reality is, you're talking to someone who's come from a third world country, where the officers are usually the military, and they're usually associated with death squads.
Yeah. And
so the fear that you're getting, the apprehension that you're getting, the evasiveness, that kind of stuff, has nothing to do with it's based on their experiences.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put it even here. I mean, I do have a level of anxiety when a cop pulls me over. I don't have any record. I've been consistently a great citizen, but there is, and some of it can be media based, some of it is real world based of some things I've went through, where you get that and you try to play it cool, and I try to put myself, luckily I can try to put myself in the officer's shoes, and I try my best to put my ego in the trunk and listen, and because, you know, I have the same thing as Mateo, and, you know, it's better to try to figure the situation out later alive than to try to argue through the situation in the moment, where you can put yourself, both people, in a danger point. So let's talk about a little bit about the fitness side of law enforcement. So you've spoke to me that the officers here are doing a challenge right now.
They are.
Is that still going?
It is still going. They weigh in. I don't know if it's every 2 weeks or whatever. I think the weigh-in is this, and it's funny because in our dispatch center they have a tape, square tape.
Yeah.
That's where the scale goes.
Yeah.
It's the same. It was a big debate on what scale they're going to use.
Yes.
And it's a certain time, and you wear the same thing that you had on because it's all accurate. And it was like putting the Constitution together when they came up with all these rules that try to make it as fair as possible. But
yeah,
they're probably in a couple weeks into it, and some of them are taking it, as they should.
Yes.
Super serious as far as the kinds of diets or exercise programs they're doing. And
yeah.
So they're all into it right now. You know?
Well, like almost kind of within this, you know, talk that we've had so far, like there's certain things that have kind of popped into my head, and is there, you know, I don't know how much you've looked at other countries and how they police. Is there certain countries that you've seen do ways you're like, you know what, that would be kind of nice, that the level of training they either get or the opportunities they get to really sharpen their skills? Because it kind of seems that and I don't know if this is the right analogy, but I think me and my wife have 4 kids, and they're 12 and under, and trying to get them to be successful every day is a day-by-day process. And it sounds like, almost in essence, being a cop, at least in Calistoga, but also I've what I'm hearing within trends across the country and things I've listened to, that is a similar trend, that maybe there's some forces where you have the resources to be able to train and have the time to decompress after being, you know, doing a certain type of work for a while. But it seems like you get up each day and it's a grind. I know I just said a lot there, but is there something to that, you know?
Oh, definitely. You know, I think it's like everything is, you know, people have to want to do it. They need to see there's a value to their fitness.
Yeah.
And, you know, and there's one thing I did mention that I'm going to throw in, that fitness has another positive component to it. It gives people confidence.
Yeah.
And not only that, but it also gives you the ability so you could do your job.
Yeah.
Because if you're reasonably physically fit, you know, that you can handle a confrontation without having to escalate it to something else.
Yeah.
You know, like going to your baton or going to your taser or going to whatever, because you can actually control someone and put handcuffs on them.
Yes.
And not get it out. So, you know, to me, confidence and you know, your level of fitness have a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
Because if you're losing the fight or whatever, you're going to jump to the next level or two up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it becomes an issue. Well, was that really warranted?
Totally. Somebody asked me to kind of ask this question. It's more about, and I was thinking about the recruitment side. How do you connect with Calistoga, and how do you connect with the youth of Calistoga?
Challenging for me, since I'm like probably 10 times older than them. I try to assert humor. I try to, you know, participate in organizations in Calistoga, as an example. I'm on the emeritus board for the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
I think I shared with you a couple weekends, 2 weekends ago. I did, because we're learning how to now do this community outreach on a, using technology.
Yeah.
And so participated in some Zoom presentations with local teams.
Yeah.
And one of the topics was, the George Floyd event and protests and Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Chief? So engaging the youth that way, trying to be as part of the community, even though I don't live in the community.
Yes.
I know a lot of people would like me to live in the community, but I have another boss.
Yeah. Yes.
My other boss would rather not commute farther to her work, and my kids go to school in Solano County.
Yeah.
But participate in Rotary, so sit on a number of committees, local communities such as the Elk Valley Partnership for Youth, the Calistoga Schools Initiative. I'm on the board of directors for the Elk Valley Family Center.
Yeah.
Since I've been here, we were doing. I got to figure out how we're going to do this. We did National Night Out. Started when I got a couple years ago when I started this. Every year we had been doing a Kid Safety Day.
Yeah.
Up at Logvie Park. We participated in the Back to School Night, and every opportunity I can have to put a cop either tabling or interacting or presenting, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that type of stuff really makes a difference, kind of, because I think there's several communities that don't make it that connection, and some kids will grow up with the perspective that a cop is not their friend, where I think most kids do, especially most kids in a demographic where a community like this are middle class or higher, but in certain lower income areas, the cop is not seen as an ally, and I think there's both sides there of being able to connect with those communities and do that.
But it's a struggle.
It is, yeah.
It's a challenge with our Latino community.
Yeah.
It's always an ongoing effort to share with them that their status in the community, their immigration status, has no bearing on the job that we do.
Yeah.
And I'm very direct with the in groups that I speak to, whether it's Rotary or it's the ELAC, which is the English language learner, which is made of Latino parents for the schools, and just saying that we're here to provide a service, and whether you're documented or not has nothing on the job we're going to do, and we can't do our job without the community. People see whether it's domestic violence or theft or vandalism or whatever it may be, and we rely on people to be willing to call us on that and be willing to share what they're seeing and doing, because I know sometimes they're afraid and they don't really want to get involved.
Yeah.
The other thing is that if they see or hear anything, if they feel that my staff has not been professional, then I tell them, I can't fix something if I don't know it's broke or I don't know we're going off the rails.
Yeah.
And I feel really strong about that. We had to hold the line. I think the perception of a lot of people is that law enforcement, we don't do a really good job of holding ourselves accountable. And sometimes it's hard to put an argument against that when you see some of these cases that come forward.
Yeah.
Right? So, but I also have a saying and believe that you control what you can control.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot easier for me to have my spirit control or influence here in Calistoga to make sure that our police department is doing the things that we need to do, and we're doing it in a manner that's with compassion, professionalism, and being fair and objective. And I'm a realist.
Yeah.
We don't always hit the mark.
Yeah.
And I apologize if we make a mistake. We need to apologize for that. But we always need to strive to do our best to hit that mark. And if we're not, then it's up to me as a chief to do something about it.
Yeah, that's great. I have one more question, and if you have any questions for me.
I try to explain to my staff that when people come to us, they're in some sort of crisis.
Yeah.
They're a victim of a crime. They're not walking off the sidewalk going, "Hey, let's go in the police department and go say hi to the police."
Yeah.
Right? They're coming to us because, they got arrested, they got a ticket, they're paying a fine, they were a victim of a theft, they need a restraining order, they need something.
Yeah.
Not a great time in their life.
Yeah.
And so as we interact with them, they're not happy people at the moment, and sometimes that gets carried over a little bit. And we just need to understand that, we're there to provide that service, and that you deal with individuals on an individual basis.
Totally.
If you had a bad interaction here, 10 minutes later when you're dealing with another person, car stop or whatever, don't take it out on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any questions for me at all?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah.
So, two things.
Yeah.
Two prongs. Similar vein. Number one is, what do you think of the Calistoga Police Department?
So that's a good question. So I think the thing that we're lucky, and we talked about this in the first time we met, is that one of the things that I've liked about the Calistoga Police Department is that there is a connection. You get to know everybody in this community, and so within knowing, and one of the reasons I wanted to get to know you is also to take away some of that anxiety of a community that I want to see elevate, and I know you want to see elevate. And so within that, the few interactions I've had with the police department here has been positive and professional. I can tell, similar to what you've said, I can tell that you guys are wearing multiple hats sometimes, and that in times like this, it's a thankless job. That I understand that the level of crap that 2% of cops do, it kind of hits everybody. But I do think one of the things I was agreeing with you that I just hope for is that when, just like if I may do something wrong, I'm held accountable for it. And I hope the same thing for any citizen or any person that is in your shoes as a police officer goes through the same process. And so I think I've overall just had a positive response with the Calistoga Police.
Second part of that question is
Yeah.
that what would you like to see different or improved upon, as far as Calistoga, what we do or how we do our business?
Yeah. I think the thing, and even talking to you is I don't know, I want to figure out a way to allow you guys to do your job without your hands behind your back, and I don't know how to do that yet, because then I feel like I can come to you and ask for accountability for certain things and change certain policies, and I think that's a community effort in doing those things and figuring out, hey, my expertise is fitness. How can I offer that expertise? So that I do agree that there is a there's a psychology piece to working out, and there's also the actual physicality of the job. And if you're strong in that area, you only increase your ability to do a better job. And so that's the area I know I can enhance. But I think that's the thing is not having this conversation is not necessarily saying what policies, what things would you change. I think the biggest thing is what things you can control now. I think having the open communication is something you can control now. But looking ahead over the next year or two, as we get through this COVID stuff, is there a way to say there is a need? I know a lot of people have a defund the police kind of statement, but I think it's more of, can we reallocate those funds in a way that just makes the town more effective? And if those funds are going in places where that's happening, then I support that. But I also want to say that I think if we can help elevate what you guys can do, I think it's just going to overall help the community. So that's kind of my thought process is more, how do we get resources, and how do we start with just the basics of what we can control right now without the resources in terms of communicating with the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.